Hello, everyone. Franklin here. Oh, it's so nice to be back. I think vlogging is a good idea. I think it must be something that I ought to keep on working on because I've missed it. It's been longer than I intended since my last post, and that is because I got sick, or rather, I got hit with a pretty intense wave of exhaustion. And so for the greater part of the past 5 to 6 days, been mostly confined to bed. Not willingly, exactly, but because I couldn't really stand up for very long at any one time. And my head was very swimmy, and all other things have been ruled out. It really just was simple exhaustion. The whole time period of COVID has been interesting for me. For a lot of folks, the issue has been not enough work, and if that's you, you have my best wishes that things will turn around for you soon. For me, it's been, oddly enough, the opposite, and I'm not exactly going to complain about having work to do. I would not have the gall to do that right now with so many people out of work. But rather the COVID setup, with the end, for me, at least for the moment, of the constant teaching travel that I used to do, and the end of anything like an actual break, a real break, where physically I am removed from the tools of my work, has meant that I've just kept working and working and working and working and working and working. And partly that's to, make the money that is there to be made, to make sure that the household stays afloat. And partly it's because I love a lot of my work, a lot of what I get to do for work. And since I love it, it's can be a comfort to bury myself in it. And so that's what I did. But unfortunately, I seem to have buried myself to the point where I was unable to breathe, unable to stand up. So I've taken steps over the past many days to actually try to sit still and relax. And that meant no video shooting because I couldn't come over to the workroom. But here I am now, and I really have missed this. I am delighted to be working right now on the swatch for my next sweater, which is what I had hoped I would be doing when I made my last vlog entry. And the swatch is a speed swatch, which was the topic of my most recent technique video. That was a lot of fun to make. And thank you for the response to it, by the way. I've been really, really gratified to see how many of you have said that you had either never tried the technique, but you would now, or you never really had anyone explain to you the reason for circular swatches, for circular projects, or that you just thought it was fun to watch. So thank you for all of the kind comments. I read them while I was in bed, when I was awake, as I spent most of those days sleeping, which was basically what the doctor ordered. And but the latter few days I was able to pick up the needles again and do a little of this and a little of that, and I'm so excited. I have not made a new sweater for myself in a very long time. And I did decide, by the way, I should say, that of the 3 yarns that I considered in the last vlog episode, I settled on picking up next this, which is the Bare Naked Wool's Stone Soup. I'll put more information down in the comments. For a couple of different reasons. One of them is very practical, which is that I have a full sweater quantity of this, and I need a sweater right now. That's the most urgent need in my wardrobe. I have very few sweaters, and I have even fewer presentable sweaters, and I have exactly one hand-knit sweater that I made for myself, and that needs to change. Part of the downside of all the traveling and all the work that I was doing pre-COVID was that almost all of my knitting has been on deadline, and almost none of it has been for me. So there have been some requests that, when you're on camera, you should wear more of your own hand knits. I don't have any. Well, it's not that I don't have any. I have very few. And a lot of those are something that it would look a little more than odd to just wear that while I vlog, meaning a single mitten, for example, is an odd look and also does present problems when you're trying to knit while you talk to people. So I need another sweater, and so I want to do another sweater, and I have a sweater quantity of the Bare Naked wools, and also, boy, doing the cables in Rosamond's sweater was so much fun. And so I am in the mood to cable right now. So of all the things the 3 things that I was looking at to play with, this is what won. And as excited as I am taking my time. That is what is on my mind right now, is taking my time. In part because exhaustion is a wake-up call that you... I was going to say that you have been burning the candle at both ends, but I'm trying to think now. Knitting the needle at both ends? I think actually that is what I'm doing. Knitting the needle at both. There's something in there. I'm going to file that away and see if I can make something out of it later on. But in any case, I've been doing too much. I've been doing too much for too long, and I need to stop doing that. And so rather than rush forward into this sweater, which will be self-designed and knit to my measurements, I am really, really just relaxing into the swatch. And the swatching process is something that I've tried to make friends with anyhow. I've talked about that in another vlog. I don't want to repeat all of that, but this one is proving to be extremely fascinating. I mean, part of it is I'm knitting to see what sort of fabric am I getting when I knit plain fabric, because there will be plain fabric, and I need to have stretches of plain fabric to really feel like I'm getting to know the nature of the yarn when there's nothing fancy going on, just plain old stockinette. And I'm finding that with this sport weight yarn, using the size 4 needles that are in it right now, I'm finding what I suspected might be the case, which is the fabric is looser than it ought to be. It is a little bit more open than I would like it to be. My taste, I think in part because I have done so much work with 19th century patterns, and 19th century knits in general had a firmer gauge, a tighter gauge than we're accustomed to, as a matter of course. I've come to prefer that. I think it looks better, and from a practical standpoint, here in Chicago, where I live, it feels better. It helps to make the garment not just warm, but to a certain degree windproof as well. And so that's the kind of fabric that I need. So the 4 is too large, and I'm having a feeling, and I will test it on this swatch. I'll just keep going, but I'll change needles and leave myself a little mark of some kind, either put some markers into it or weave a little scrap yarn through it to indicate where the change happens. I think I might wind up having to go down to a US size 2 to get the fabric that I really want for this. Part of that need for the firmer tension also is that firmer tensions will tend to make textures really stand out, and I want the cables on this to really stand out, and right now that's not what's happening. They're there, I can see them, and yes, part of it is due to the fact that this is not a creamy white wool, as light as possible, but you're never going to see me in a creamy white wool, because creamy white wool makes me look like I'm like I have some sort of terrible illness that is bringing out all of the worst color blotches in my face. So I don't wear creamy white wool, but this is pale enough that it's great for cables. It's fine for cables. But even so, at that looser gauge, the cables just are not standing out the way that I want them to. And it's also been interesting to think about the scale of the cables that I want to use, because what's in here so far, and I'll see about doing some close-ups of this that I can mix into the vlog when I edit it. The cable pattern that I'm using is one that I love, and because I just put it into Rosamond sweater. It's the main cable down the back of the garment, and it looks wonderful on Rosamond, in that yarn, in that sweater. But Rosamond is smaller than I am, and the yarn that I used for her sweater was that mysterious merino out of my stash that was certainly a worsted weight. So a worsted weight is considerably heavier than a sport weight, and this is a sport weight. So the same cable, knit with that finer yarn, you know, it doesn't have enough oomph. It looks very underpowered, at least by itself. I had vaguely imagined that, oh, well, that's really funny. The cable that I ran down the back of Rosamond's sweater, I'll run it down the front of mine, and it'll be a little, you know, daddy-daughter feature, and won't that be cute? But I am either going to have to choose a different cable or set of cables. I mean, in doing a cabled sweater, you really are thinking in terms of the overall texture effect. So it's rather rare to just run one cable down the center of an otherwise plain piece. But I was thinking of it as a centerpiece, but it might have to be moved off to the edges, or I might have to rewrite it so that rather than it being a 2/2 cable where each cable rope is made up of 4 stitches and the twists come from 2 of those stitches periodically crossing over the other 2 stitches, I might have to make this a 3/3 cable, perhaps, so that there will be 6 stitches. That might make those ropes at this weight have some of that visual heft that the smaller cable does when you work it in a worsted weight. If this all sounds like endless fuss and botheration, and I hope it's not boring to listen to, but if it sounds like it must be awful to knit, all I can say is it's not. It's proving to be really soothing to be able to work this out, to daydream over it, to work on the swatch for a while and then give it a little feel or hold it back, put it over here, to do the things that I do to try and make sure of how I feel about a project before I go and cast on for the entire sweater. I want, when I knit that sweater, to have as much forward motion as possible. I do not want to do my experiments in the full round of the sweater. I want to do my experiments here on this relatively tiny speed swatch, because it won't hurt to rip this out when I'm done with it. It drives me bananas to have to rip out, you know, the entire chest of a sweater. Heaven knows I've done it. But that's the thing. I'm becoming an experienced enough knitter at this point that I can remember all the times that I've had to rip out a large-scale experiment in a genuine piece, in an actual project, and I don't like that feeling. So I'm trying to just let myself relax into this swatch. And I will, in case you're curious, I will be soaking and blocking it. This is a natural fibers yarn, and one of the things about natural fibers in particular is that when they hit water, a lot of stuff can happen. Sometimes it's a difference in gauge. You know, the fabric, most often in my experience, the fabric will grow, which is important to know if you need good gauge readings so that you can knit to fit. And a lot of times it's not only that, it's a genuine and remarkable change in the hand of the fabric, the way the fabric feels, the way it drapes. And also, it's not uncommon for some yarns that don't seem particularly fluffy. Well, when you give them a good wet block, the spinning oils, for example, that may have been used to hold the fibers in place and prevent an enormous dust cloud of fiber flying through the air in the mill. When you take the spinning oil out, the fibers fluff up to their full volume, and the fabric that you see looks different, feels different, drapes different, acts differently. These are things I want to know before I would reach the point where, say, I would put an entire sweater that I consider to be finished, so now it's going to get its soak and block, its first laundering, effectively. I don't want nasty surprises at that point, and I have had them, and I don't want them anymore, so I'm going to try to minimize them. And it just does feel good to be able to relax. This has been a horribly hectic year in bizarre ways for so many people. And I feel lucky that when it came time for me to get into bed for 5 days, I was able to get into bed for 5 days. Not everybody has that luxury, which is wrong, but it's true that not everybody has that luxury. And during that time, I realized that how much I had been hurting myself. And what's really sad is especially that this time of year, what with it being a holiday season, for lots of folks, for lots of different reasons and lots of different holidays, is that on top of the usual everyday stress, you add the holiday stress. And I was sent a memory via Facebook from one of my Facebook friends, and so glad that she sent it to me, even though it was a bit, no, it was more than a bit, even though it was a heartbreaking thing to look at. I was still glad of the reminder. I, several years ago now, had posted on Facebook from my parents' house right around Christmas Eve a photograph of a tree ornament from my childhood. And if you immediately have thought, a hand-crocheted snowflake or a hand-knit teddy bear or something, nope, not at all. A plastic ornament from a Hallmark store. And the only thing remarkable about it, because it's an ornament that was made, I would estimate, in the tens of thousands at least, that ornament was one that I remembered my mother buying, not making, that she bought from a shop. And even so, that particular day before Christmas, I was looking at it on the tree and posted about it because even factory made, it had a lot of special memories for me. And in particular, I remembered my mother choosing it. I remembered us hanging it. And I remembered sitting and watching the tree with my mother, because that was one of her great joys, was to just be quiet and sit down. And she was a perpetual motion machine, my mother. She almost never just sat down. She was almost always doing something. I think she was happiest that way. But she would sit and watch the Christmas tree. And I had sat and watched the Christmas tree with her as well. And when I posted that photograph, we were, as a family, sitting and watching the Christmas tree, knowing that was going to be my mother's last Christmas. We knew. She had cancer. She was coming up on, she hadn't even reached 1 year from her diagnosis. And there was no hope at that point. And we knew that this was it, her last experience of her favorite time of every year. And we did a lot of sitting. And we were fortunate in a way to know that this was it. This was Mom's last Christmas. But all those other Christmases, we didn't know. And I suppose that experiencing my mother's last Christmas with her made me think about all those other Christmases, and honestly, any of them could have been the last one. And my mother was a maker. I mean, what is now called a maker. At the time, there wasn't really a word for it. It was just, everybody seemed to make and do things at home. And she was one of those people. And she did a lot of homemade holiday surprises and presents and treats, including matching pajamas for the entire family. More than once, she made matching pajamas for our whole family. And that would be in addition to the holiday cooking and the holiday baking and the decorating, which she loved. And there were so many, many things that took up her time around Christmas. But one thing my parents were very good at was knowing when to say enough around the holidays. Because Christmas was big for us. We were a Catholic family. Christmas was something that we looked forward to all year round. But I think one of the reasons why is because there was a point that would usually come just before Christmas Eve when my parents taught me to think that, well, whatever is not done now is not going to be done. And that's okay. It's okay. At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. One has done one's best. And now, because Christmas is really about to begin, because my parents were very, very, very big on the 12 days of Christmas in their traditional location after the 25th and not before. We will now begin Christmas for real. And that means rest. That means quiet time together. Our Christmases were not dull and they weren't stuffy, but the best of them had a hush to them that was so lovely. And I did not grow up miles and miles and miles from everyone. My family not only had a television, we had multiple televisions. We were not a latter-day version of the Waltons by any means. It wasn't that there was no television during Christmas. It meant that the approach to it was different. The approach to everything was different. And there was that point just before Christmas Eve when the work was done and the rush was done, and wherever you happened to be in whatever projects were going on, you let go and you were quiet. And what that meant to me as I was sitting there looking at that mass-produced plastic tree ornament from 1979, that I had had all of those Christmases with my mother. And I was so glad that she had been like that she had not been so obsessed with everyone's favorite cookie in multiple dozens and absolutely perfect seam finishing on the pajamas and feeling miserable at the idea that, the knit hat would not be ready for Christmas morning and might still have ends to be woven in, or for heaven's sake, might not even have the top closed when it was wrapped up in the box and presented. She let that go. She was a careful woman. She was a perfectionist, but Christmas, the most sacrosanct thing about Christmas was that we spent time together. And I hope that, because it's not necessarily family, but I hope that this time of year, if you are able to get some rest, and I hope you are, that you do get some rest. And I hope that, if possible, that you're able to get that rest safely with someone you love, which we all know doesn't necessarily mean family. Some people would have not liked the Christmases that I had that were so family oriented because, not everybody strikes it lucky in the family department. So whether it's family, spouse, partner, pet, one person, two people, whatever you can do this year. I hope you can rest with someone you love. And you know what? Even if you're watching this and you're it, okay? You are a Christmas of one. Love yourself. Be good to yourself. You have something that I think quite a few people would like, which is the opportunity for solitude and for doing what they wish to by themselves. And can you do that? It's a weird thing to talk about. I don't want to make assumptions. I don't want anyone to feel left out or that their holiday is less than because of their configuration. Whatever your situation is, I hope it will be peaceful. I guess that's what it boils down to. You know, I don't write these things before I record them. I just turn the camera on and talk. I have sent so many cards to people over the years that include the word peace, and I guess that's what I really hope you get this year, because world peace, I guess that's what that's what's in the carol, right? You know, peace on earth. Peace on earth would be lovely. I hope you have peace on your couch. I hope you have peace in your special chair. I hope you have peace reclining in bed with Netflix and crochet or whatever will make you happy. I hope you have that kind of peace. And this has turned out to be a really long vlog, and I'm not even entirely sure of all of what I talked about, but I think mostly it was about taking time, and I'm finding that it feels good to do that as much as I can in the ways that I can, and I hope you can too. So there will be more things coming. There's some videos that are now pushed back because I have not been able to work. But so there will be more things coming. And for those of you who are Patreon patrons, there will be quite a few live streams. And so we can hang out there. I hope that next time I see you, maybe I can have the swatching done. Maybe I can have the swatching finished, and I can show you some sketches and swatch photos and whatnot of what I have in mind for this. And until then, until I can see you again, take good care of yourself and take good care of each other, and take a breath. And peace. Peace. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel so you'll be the first to know about future episodes. Click like or leave me a comment to let me know your thoughts. And if you really, really liked what you saw, check out my Patreon campaign, where my patrons enjoy exclusive access to downloads, live streams, and other bonus material every week.